Marketing is changing faster than ever. AI is reshaping the way we work. Attribution is becoming messier. The lines between product, brand, growth, and customer experience is disappearing. In this episode, I'm joined by Arielle Johncox, former head of marketing and interim CEO at Balsamiq, to talk about what separates great marketers from everyone else in this new era. We discuss why writing may be the most valuable skill that you can develop, why AI rewards strong opinions instead of replacing them, and why the future of marketing belongs to the people who can connect the dots across the entire business and not just focus on marketing. Let's get started. Hey Arielle, I'm really excited to have you here today on Heart Before Cart. I guess before we get started, I would love for you to kind of tell everyone about yourself a little, who you are, what you do.
Yeah. So I'm Arielle. I am Chicago-based, and I've been in marketing / strategy and business for well over a decade by now. I got my start in maybe a little bit more of the traditional advertising and creative space. I was a copywriter and art director. And my pivot into marketing was through social media because I was the young person in the room and someone asked if I knew this thing called Twitter. And I said, sure. No, I didn't. I totally didn't. But I took it on, started to build a career in social, realized that I was pretty good at the content marketing piece of it too. The writing and drawing skills came in. Learned strategy along the way. Content marketing really quickly became what we now call product marketing, but that wasn't really a term that we used many years ago. I feel like that's a newer term. And so then that led into launches and integrated marketing. And suddenly the PR team was reporting to me and all of these fun things. And then most recently, I was the head of marketing at Balsamiq and transitioned into interim CEO to lead an AI pivot. And so that's been the journey. And now getting a little bit deeper into the marketing roots again after the stint as interim CEO.
Love that. First of all, that sounds very familiar because I remember my first ever job was at a social media marketing agency and I knew nothing, like nothing. But I walked in and I was like, I have the confidence. I'm just going to figure it out. And I think I was working there for a few months and then they were like, does anyone know YouTube ads? And I'm like, sure. I'll do that. But I don't know, that's how you learn, right? I think that's the best way to like learn something is to actually do it.
Yeah, I remember super early in my career, my manager says, hey, we need an integrated marketing calendar. You know how to build one of those. Will you build us the integrated marketing calendar and start to put together this integrated marketing function? And I'm sitting there pretty fresh out of university thinking,
what's integrated?
What's a function? What are you talking about? And it was really funny because even my university journey was super varied. I wasn't always an advertising and communications major. And so I was even playing catch up there. And even though I'd been working and freelancing in marketing for years, actually, which I didn't realize, but I was like, yeah, I can build the integrated marketing calendar and integrated marketing function. I know how to do that. Cut to me desperately Googling what that is, how to do it. I looked for all the templates, and that's actually how I credit that moment to one of the things that grew my career the fastest because I really honestly didn't know how to do it. And Googling led me down this rabbit hole of marketing Twitter and like the really early days of all of these communities, the early days of maybe there were some Facebook groups. LinkedIn was in its earlier days and no one really knew how to use that. And people were starting these Slack communities way back or on all these different platforms that existed. And I got my way into a bunch of these communities and people because I didn't even know maybe that imposter syndrome was a thing, right? You're too naive. So you're just like, hey, your title is integrated marketing. Will you tell me what you do? Because I have to do it. I learned so much because I just had to figure it out and make it happen.
Yeah. Two things came to me while you were saying that. One is, isn't it funny that like imposter syndrome only starts after you actually have a ton of experience? Like when you get started, you're like, I can do anything. Like just doing all the things. And then imposter syndrome literally started for me when I was like 4 or 5 years into speaking on stage. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be a speaker. I have nothing to teach. And then the other thing is, while you were talking about like, oh, I Googled and I went on Twitter and I was on LinkedIn, I was thinking, I wonder if that can happen now, because most people will just default to ChatGPT and Claude, and they're like, tell me all the stuff, like build me an integrated marketing calendar or whatever it was. And it would just build it for them. But you don't actually go through the motions of like spending time in the platforms, in the communities, learning the stuff, burning things, whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think this is where people tend to stand out, and where you'll see some of the most talented people stand out is because they'll actually still do some of that investigation. So while I agree your traditional Googling maybe has changed and given way to working with ChatGPT, Codex, Claude, and all of Claude's co-work and everything, the smartest people are still going to talk to other people that have the lived experience. Because you can prompt whatever you want. You can have AI help you make the prompts better, which is something that I do. But if you're not an expert in it, it's actually really hard to know if AI is giving you the right thing. So I'll give you an example. In the interim CEO role, I'm pretty confident when I have to do a marketing task, right? Especially at the beginning, the first few weeks of the role, like I'm good. I can kick off the AI bots to do it. I can build an agent. I feel good. When I have to do some of the other stuff where I'm a little bit greener, I'm newer to it, I'm not as confident. And so sure, I could prompt and work with AI on this financial model or this operations plan or this sticky legal situation or this, mixed bag of stuff that you deal with as an interim CEO of a small but vibrant tech company, and we're multinational, right? So now I have to figure out Italian laws and French laws and German things and all these requirements. And I've had exposure to it, and I had some education around it, but it's not the same as doing it. And so that still required me to actually talk to people, so that even if I was working with AI and even if I was Googling, I could pull on other people's lived experiences, even if I don't have that. I actually think that's going to be one of the biggest differentiators of people that will succeed in this new era that we have. It's, can you use the tools and build the context that you need around it fairly quickly?
Yeah, I love that. And I'm super curious because, as you mentioned, like you started in mostly like social media, copywriting. By the way, I think the best marketers started out as copywriters. Almost my favorite marketers everywhere are people who were like, I used to write copy, because there's a discipline there. There's like learning how to do the research, really getting to know the customers. So that sits well with me. Like on you, you're like, you've done so many different things, but you have the foundation of get to know the customer, understand the why, know what to sell. And then whether if it's in a piece of copy on a web page or if it's a social post or if it's as a CEO, it's always the same foundation, make it about the customer. So that really sits with me. I wanted to ask you about like the transition into interim CEO, because that's a different thing. So when you own your own business, you're like the CEO. Like I am the CEO of my agency. Great. But that's different than going in to do growth for a company and then transitioning into like CEO. So how did that happen? Why did it feel right in that way? And how much of your role had anything to do with growth?
Yeah, so lots of layers. So
many questions in one.
So many questions. So first, how did it happen? We had been talking a lot just naturally about the market and how it was evolving, because Balsamiq, when I started, was just a wireframing tool. And I think it was the week I started at Balsamiq that first ChatGPT model with the user-friendly UI came out, because OpenAI had those models with API access, all of that fun stuff for a while. And I think someone even gave an interview there. Even they were surprised that when you put it behind a user-friendly UI, everyone wants to use it. Crazy.
Who knew?
I think it was the same week that I started. And so pretty quickly, right, I'd been marketing for 1, 2, maybe almost 3 years at Balsamiq. And we'd been talking about what this means. And no one exactly knew. We saw that it was accelerating and things in product design and development were changing. And so we started to realize, hey, this unlocks some opportunities for Balsamiq. How do we navigate that with a tool that's super niche down? And in some of those conversations, we had been kind of getting to the point of there's a really big opportunity with AI here, both internally at the company and how we work, and in the product and in the marketing, right? And all of the stuff that comes with it. And, Balsamiq today is 18 years old. Like, this is a pretty impressive thing that Peldi, the founder and owner, has built. And he just hit this point where he said, you know what, I'm a product guy. I love the product. There's so many big picture things about this pivot that we just need fresh eyes to come in and lead. And so he asked me, he was like, hey, can you do this pivot? I'm going to still do product design and all of that fun stuff, but I need someone other than me to zoom out, because I've been really focused in this one niche for so long and defending it that, with all these guidelines, because obviously when you've got a single owner and founder, right, they get to set some guardrails. It's not like you're voting with the board. It's a different experience. Will you do that? Because it's not just partnering to pivot the product. It's also, how does that impact operations and customer experience and engineering and how we work internally and admin and all of these big things. I mean, every single process and system had to be upended because it could be, and it was better for the company, the team, and the customers that it was. And I think many companies realized that, but we wanted to do it right. And so he just wanted a fresh set of eyes on it. And so he asked me to step up, and I thought about it. Imposter syndrome definitely immediately kicks in. And like, can I do that? Like, I've been doing more than just marketing for a while. I had taken on customer experience too. So customer success and some customer ops stuff. I was very involved in those decisions, and we have a wonderful success and support team. But there's so many other parts of the business. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, okay, well, I'll try it. I guess I'll do it scared, right? What's the worst that can happen? And the reason why it works super well is because Peldi and I have a great relationship. And I think that's important if you're coming in as an interim CEO anywhere, but especially to a privately owned company where it's pretty much a solo founder. That's like that person's other kid. Like, that's their baby that they've grown with. And very, very, very few founders will make this type of choice. They often choose a plethora of other options, right? This just isn't super common. And so it was really important that we were on the same page throughout, that I understood what his goals were for this and where he wanted me to step in and help. And one of the things that I love is innovation and good change and impact. And so I think that, combined with this background in really customer focused and product focused marketing, combined with that creative start, right, with social media and creativity and everything, it also means I'm chronically online. I think all of those things converged into being able to take on the challenge and very quickly get up to speed with a number of areas that I was adjacent to, but not in. And it was cool. It's given me, I think, as a marketer and a business operator, a perspective that is so unique for the stage of career that I'm in, and just in general. Like, very few people get to do this. If you're going to be CEO of something, it's usually way, way, way later in your career, or you started the company. Very often do you go into something that's kind of already working and needs just this injection of energy. And so getting to do that was unique and exciting and just a really cool challenge. And I'm grateful that I got to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I also think many marketers kind of fall into the habit of measuring very specific things. So if you're doing paid, or if you're in CRO, or if you're an SEO, you're kind of really one goal focused. I need more conversions. I need more traffic. I need more clicks. And then you're not really seeing the big picture. In CRO, what we do, we're constantly looking at the big picture, because it's not just like, oh, it's this funnel. No, it's the whole business. Like, we're doing an audit right now for this big company. And I just had a meeting with the team, and they're like, well, here's all the things we discovered, but also there's a ton of stuff that's wrong with the product. Like, the product's breaking here, and this problem was our pricing. And we're seeing this situation with this. And it's stuff that has nothing to do with marketing. And on the surface, you would say, well, that's not our job. Like, we were hired to do a CRO audit and just tell them how to optimize their funnels. But we also know that if we help them optimize the actual product, if we start looking into how they're doing customer success, if we help them optimize that stuff, it will have an overall impact on the business. And I think too often marketers are focused on just their little niche. So I think that's what mostly I was so excited about talking with you, because you went from, social media to growth and then CEO. And I think that gives you the opportunity now going into your next roles, and however you help other companies, you're really going to have so much more power and also insight to not just think about that one funnel, but the whole company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does a couple things. So one, no one can accuse you of not knowing how to read a P&L ever again. No, no one's going to tell you that. And that's just something that I think a lot of times marketers get a bad reputation for, of they're not business minded. And so then over the past few years, we've seen marketers swing into that direction where actually everything became spreadsheets and ROI and super, super tracked. And one of the things that I've always pushed against was that marketing is this really neat way of tracking. I think just now we're starting to realize that the funnel is less of a neat funnel and it's more of one of those insane maps from a detective show where there's red lines everywhere and string and like little annotations and sticky notes and stickers. That's the funnel. And the hard part is that as companies have grown, right? We have lots of big companies, and tech companies in particular have grown, but all types of businesses, they've needed to figure out things like levels and compensation and org charts. And with that comes this requirement to measure everything. And the way that you get promoted and you grow your career is now tied to all of this stuff that you measure and own your number and ladder your OKRs to your KPIs here and here and here, and like add in all the acronyms possible. And so what that did was that created an environment where we've actually incentivized people to just care about their one thing. Now we're evolving a little bit. And we're bringing back some of the storytelling and brand. I think a lot of companies are realizing actually that product marketing and brand marketing sit really closely together, like that storytelling and narrative. And so we're opening up this whole world where growth isn't just growth hacking and spreadsheets, there's more. But now what we're starting to lose sight of is you actually need the people that really care about those nitpicky channel details. Like you want to have those people, especially at a certain size. When you're in a small business like Balsamiq, you're constantly looking at the big picture, because even though Balsamiq plays against giants, it's a small company, right? There's not like a marketing team of 30 people in the background. And so you're not going to have channel owners in the same way. And so you're constantly looking at the big picture and the story. But at some of these mid-size or bigger companies, like you want the person looking at the details, and you want someone that's zooming out across everything and putting the story together, because all it is, it's a story. Marketing is storytelling to the customers, but marketing is also storytelling to the business, because in many businesses, you don't have something like a chief commercial officer or a chief, merchandising person. Like all of that kind of gets split between marketing and product. And someone needs to connect the dots between, okay, the financials say this, and then the product's doing this, and then we're promoting it this way. And here's how I think the pieces are coming together. Marketers are uniquely positioned to do that if they're strategic. And the interim CEO experience gave me that ability to say, okay, if I'm pitching this brand campaign, because they've told me these marketing goals are here, this product marketing campaign, I also know that CEO or that CPO or head of product or whoever just got out of a meeting where they talked about the 12 things going wrong in the release that they've already promised next week, right? And then I know that they just had a meeting with the accountants, and they went over some tax payment from like 2 years ago that they didn't know was still open. And so you have this perspective of they have so many open buckets, basically, that they're just trying to juggle. And I feel like I've gotten much better at communicating those thoughts to the different audiences I have internally, so that I can build that authority and influence no matter what the role is or what my title is.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about right now when it comes to growth? So you're essentially finishing, right, your interim role. What's next for you? What are you excited about?
I think it depends. I think it's one of those, the world is my oyster things. It's a little spooky because I'm not great at breaks. I actually really suck at it. And so anytime someone's like, how have you gone from social media to interim CEO in X years? The answer is I don't know how to take breaks. And I recommend knowing. So I'm maybe going to learn that. But I don't know. I mean, I probably by the time this is out, I'll be doing some sort of new project, knowing me. But I mean, there are a couple things, right? So I've always done consulting for growing companies. So everyone from startups to bigger companies that are looking for some of that innovation and spark. A lot of the growth type work that I do tends to center around product marketing and being that connector between the growth part of things and the brand side of things. That's actually where I think I'm the strongest, and the interim CEO experience gave me a leg up there. And then the other thing I do is I coach mostly marketers, but now different types of operators that are trying to grow their careers. So I'll probably keep doing a little bit of that, and then open to what's out there. I think there are a lot of really interesting companies that are growing and are at this inflection point where we have budding industries or pivoting industries. And there's a ton of opportunity to tell some stories a lot better and connect the dots across looking cool and fun and having all of those growth things dialed in, CRO, paid ads, performance, all that stuff, and building all those dots to tell one story.
Yeah. One of the things I'm most excited about right now is seeing how almost all the different skills within marketing are kind of converging into one. So it used to all be silos, like I'm over here doing SEO, I'm over here doing paid. And I love the fact that right now you can't do one without the other. And because you have so many different touch points, you kind of spoke about the wonky funnel. At the end of the day, we've got I think it's 11 or 15 different touch points on average before someone converts, which is crazy, right? Like you ask someone and they're like, well, I saw a video, then I signed up to your newsletter, then I saw an ad, someone sent me something on Reddit, I saw this on LinkedIn. So there's multiple touch points. Everything has to work together. Attribution is kind of dead. Not measurement, attribution. So people can click on your ad, but that's not where they actually came from. They came from 5 steps beforehand. You can't work in silos anymore. You actually have to really pay attention to what product marketing is doing, what SEO is doing, and work all together in CRO too to keep growing. And you also have to be okay with not being able to measure every single thing. And I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be amazing because, as you were saying before, we've kind of forgotten about the people. We're so obsessed with being data driven, but very numbers, kind of very specific to numbers and behavioral information. We've forgotten that there's people behind the screens. So I love the idea of storytelling. Yeah. So do you think that we're going to see more of a surge in storytelling now? Or I mean, obviously AI is kind of killing creativity. There's a lot of stuff going on. So what do you think is going to happen over the next while? I'm not even going to say years because who knows?
Yeah. Well, is AI killing creativity? I don't know. Because it could be, but that's a pretty pessimistic way to view the world. And it's a pretty old way to view the world. When, and it's scary, right? And there are very real implications. I look at the jobs numbers too, and I'm a business and econ nerd and all of that fun stuff. And so I look at it too, and I'm like, okay. And we've been disproportionately hit, I think, in tech. And some companies are now walking back those choices. But yes, AI comes with all that. It comes with the data center and the water and the environmental stuff. There's all that. But that aside, is it killing creativity? Because I don't know. Yeah, there's a ton of creative slop and nonsense out there that AI is able to generate and people can push it out there. But true creativity still exists. If I walk around the city of Chicago, which is where I'm from, there's still an art fair every weekend this summer and people are still showing up in droves. If I think of the brands that are sticking in my mind right now and what's performing, brands that are creative are still standing out. This was a while ago now, maybe a year, I don't remember. Post Hog redid their site and they did that whole retro theme. AI already existed. It's gotten more powerful since then, but AI didn't kill their ability to do that and stand out and get everybody talking about it. They did it anyway. And Post Hog is a company that's building AI, into their product. So I don't know that it's killing creativity. I think it's killing music.
I think that's what I mean though. First of all, yes. So the companies that aren't using AI as a crutch are becoming more creative, and they're also going deeper into brand, right? Brand has never mattered as much as it does right now. And creating your own voice and standing out and being creative in a way that doesn't feel like AI slop. So I think that's mostly more what I mean, which is a lot of brands are using AI right now for their creative, for kind of in the name of producing things quicker, in a name of getting stuff out and shipping. And you're right, Post Hog and many others, the ones who actually take, stop and put more emphasis on creative are doing better.
And I think it just depends on the company's values. So you have some of these companies that are super AI pilled or whatever, but they're not producing slop. They're opinionated about what they build and how they promote it. And I think that's the biggest difference. So a company like Beehive, for example, they're growing fast. They're super opinionated. Some of their product decisions are really exciting for people. And sometimes people are like, what are you doing? And then they explain and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get your point of view. And I get how you're talking about it. They're using AI and they talk about it with frequency. The CEO talks about it in his newsletters. But that's not a company that's producing slop. That's a company that customers admire and love, and they're building this community and they're doubling down on the AI and the human side. But then on the flip side, you have companies that are producing tons of slop that often maybe feel resource strapped, or they're in what I call like panic mode, right? Everybody else around me is growing, so I have to grow. That's often where you're seeing some of the challenges. You're seeing a company in panic mode because they're worried about catching up or being able to compete, or they just don't have a strong point of view. Either they never had one or they don't have one anymore. And when you don't have that, AI or no AI, you were going to have the same problem, because what a lot of these companies did, especially before the 2020, 2021, like when everyone started hiring after COVID, before that, companies would just hire and they would just have a lot of people to create this stuff. And it's nothing against the people, but with the instructions people were given, it's like you got these churn factories, actually ad agencies included, like people that did all the banner ads and stuff. Like it wasn't like all of that stuff was as creative. It's just faster now with AI and it's a little bit more prevalent and it looks a little bit more the same. But if you weren't going to have a point of view before AI, you weren't really going to develop one after it either. And right. And maybe you still could, but that's where the real gap becomes. And that's why I say something like storytelling makes a comeback, because you can tell a story, but the story is much more interesting if you have a point of view, and you can even tell the same story from your point of view. So this is an example I use when I work with different companies. There are dozens of versions of the Cinderella story. Dozens. They're all very, very interesting. Some of them are pretty boring. Like if someone just recites the same Cinderella story and misses a couple details and doesn't add sounds or change the inflection of their voice, right? If you're just kind of in a monotone telling the story, super lame. Someone else can tell the same story with inflection and it's interesting. A third person can tell the same story from the perspective of a different country and it's interesting, because every country has a slightly different Cinderella story with different details and different elements in it. It's the same base of a Cinderella story, but it's got a point of view and it's got meaning and it's got a lens. And so it's not that everybody can create the same stuff. It's just if you're not going to use your brain and infuse your point of view, then we can give you any tool and the result was going to be the same, maybe faster or slower.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that example. So what do you think anyone who's kind of coming into marketing now and they're just getting started, maybe they're getting their first role, or they're thinking about, hey, I'm doing social media, I want to do something else, or they're evolving. What do you think people need to, like, what are the skills that marketers need to hone and work on the most?
I think you've got to be a killer writer. Beyond anything, you have to be able to write well. And the reason why I say that isn't because you might want to write ads or blog posts or, whatever. We don't know, but you're going to write for customers, you're going to write for AI agents, and you're going to write for your team. And if you're not a good writer, then all three of those things are falling apart and you're going to have a really bad time, because you can't convince anyone that your ideas are good. You can't communicate your ideas to anybody. Customers don't understand any of your ideas. You can't work with other people on your team, and you can't work with the AI agents because guess what? They're reading your prompts too. And so now you're just stuck in a pickle. And so above everything, I would learn how to write really well. How can you tailor your message to different audiences? How can you communicate your thoughts really clearly? How can you pull in writing styles from different disciplines to improve it? So, for example, most marketers could learn a lot from journalism. Don't bury the lead. Anytime someone's struggling to communicate with customers or executives, my guess is they're burying the lead. And if they took one journalism and reporting class, life would probably be a lot better because it would just stay in their brains. Learning how to write headlines. You might not want to write ads, but there's something about the activity of writing hundreds of headlines about something silly like an umbrella that can feel mind-numbing, but you have to push your creativity. You have to get really specific with your language. And if you can do that there, now you can do that in other places, and it unlocks a whole world for you. And so I think that's a really important skill. And then I think beyond that, exposing yourself to different parts of marketing, but then starting to learn which part of marketing you gravitate towards the most. Because we're always going to need specialists of some kind, even in a generalist world.
Yeah.
Even if you identify as a generalist, what kind of generalist are you? So, for example, like I've exposed myself to the parts of marketing and even beyond, but I'm not going to put myself up for paid performance management roles. That could be a part of what I do, but it can't and it shouldn't be the focus because I am going to get bored if I do that. And someone else won't. And so knowing what you gravitate towards is super important because then you can build yourself into like that T-shaped marketer that we all talk about where you have this breadth and then this depth. And the way that you get into doors in places is they're looking for that depth and you can offer all of these other things. And so that's where you can go. But if you have writing down, you can tackle a lot of other disciplines because now like spreadsheets and all that, you can learn it. Like AI can teach you that, but writing requires a taste level that is really hard to get right with the AI agents if you're not good at it at a baseline.
I couldn't agree more. I think, obviously, I said before, I think the best marketers are copywriters, the ones who start out writing. And that's because you have all the foundations. People that know how to write really have done the foundational work of understanding who they're writing for and how and what needs to be where. And I just think that is the key to being a great marketer. And then the other thing I would add is psychology. So the more, for me, when I really understood the psychology of how people buy and how people make decisions, that for me was pivotal because it is very easy to get dragged into spreadsheets and tables and what's the latest cohort when, you take a step back and you're like, okay, there's people. It's not robots. And as long as you're selling to people, you need to understand how our brains work and how we make decisions and what impacts us. And as technology changes, people don't as much. So you can always learn technology. If you have the basis of psychology. Yeah, that's kind of my additional to writing, I think.
Yeah, I think everyone could stand to take some psychology courses or do some reading on that of what makes people tick because it helps you with your customers, but it helps you with your stakeholders too. Because inevitably you're working with other marketers, ideally. Or if you're the solo marketer, you're the only person doing marketing, you're still probably working with other people. And if you're not working with other people, you're working with yourself. And it would still be excellent to know how your brain works because you're going to have to hack it sometimes. I mean, you're going to have to push yourself, I think, to succeed.
Yeah, agreed. Arielle, thank you so much for being here today and chatting to me. Can you tell us where people can learn more about you and get in touch with you?
Yeah. So easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn, Arielle Johncox. You can also look up my website, ariellejohncox.com, and send me a note through there. Those are the platforms that I'm most active on. You could probably find my profile on X and Threads, although you might find a little bit more about baking and art and the color pink and maybe less about marketing.
I love that. Yes, my Threads and Twitter and Instagram are mostly comic book stuff. And I always tell people, if you want the professional stuff, there's my blog, there's my website, LinkedIn. If you want to know my take on like doomsday and what's coming up, that's over there on like Twitter. You get the different types of Talia. Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure chatting to you today.
Yeah, thank you.